Well, I thought we were going to be visible immediately, but it turns out I need to hover my mouse over something, because of course I do.
I see.
Why would there ever not be technical difficulties, right? It wouldn't be a live stream that I'm involved in if it went off without a hitch, would it?
Hey, can't win without losing, my man.
Yeah, I am now on to this is the beginning of hour 3 of me talking to a camera today. So it's going great. But yes, everybody, welcome back to the Weird Bible Podcast. I'm sorry we rescheduled it thrice. There's only so much that can be done. But tonight we're finally going to bring a close to our King David saga here that took 2 episodes longer than I expected it to, but I don't know why I thought that we would be able to get through the entire life of King David in 2.5 hours.
Would be like that.
It do be like that. And to those who are wondering where Thornbury is, he was not able to get out of work, and he had stuff tonight that he had to be doing, so he could not stream in from anywhere else. And I'm in West Virginia because I'm guesting on another podcast for the week. So this has been an experience. I sat down 10 minutes ago. I left my house at 8 a.m. and I have not sat down until like 10 minutes ago. It's going great. But we have a bit of content for you tonight about King David, where we get through some of the stuff you're going to be a bit more familiar with. The song Hallelujah, of course, is based on the events in this episode, as well as Saul dying in a very kooky, spicy little manner. And, of course, the end of David's reign and what that meant for Israel, which will probably be a focus of later episodes, because, of course, after Israel, or after David and Solomon, Israel is no more. It is no longer one united Jewish state. It goes into a civil war period. So we're observing basically the only 3 people to ever be king over all of Israel successfully. And the term successfully here is something I think we got to use liberally, because David has a ton of his own flaws, a ton of his own issues. But that's kind of the idea here, is that there's a certain message in that David, despite being anointed by God, chosen to rule the Israelites, he is still not perfect. So there's kind of this through line of humanity is never going to get there on its own, which of course leads into what we get in the New Testament of the Bible. So I think the place to start here is with where we were at the end of last episode, which was David had just been hunted by Saul in the wilderness. David sneaks up on Saul as he's relieving himself, cuts off a bit of his garment, carries it away. Saul realizes it's David, has a bit of a moment of clarity. Isaiah and I disagreed on whether or not we believe that Saul was actually having a moment of clarity last time. Right. Then, of course, the very next thing Saul does is hunt David again. And David...
Yep, that be how it be.
David takes it extremely well, in my opinion, considering he once again decides not to kill Saul. David's... The problem I think that we're having here is that Saul is playing Crusader Kings and David is playing Assassin's Creed. So what?
Just you being you. Continue.
They're gonna get it. They're gonna get the reference. It'll make sense. Also, I do apologize if the stream is at all laggy. I don't know what the internet speed at my Airbnb is, but I'm trying my best. And then as for the rest of it, what happens here is Saul has tracked David down yet again. David sneaks out at night with just a couple of picked men, sneaks all the way down to the tent, past Abner. His men are like, "You want me to kill him?" And he's like, No, please don't do that. And he sees Saul and his men are like, "You want me to kill him?" And David's once again like, nope. Who are we to kill the Lord's anointed? And his men, of course, are like, you know what? That's a fantastic point, my king. So he's
thought of it that way.
Yeah, he steals Saul's spear, and I believe he steals a helmet or a garment as well. I don't have the passage in front of me right now. And he runs up onto the hill and he calls down to Abner and is like, "How could you possibly, you, the king's own bodyguard, how could you fail to protect his person in such an egregious manner?" And Saul is like, "David, my son, is that you?" Seemingly forgetting once again that he keeps trying to kill his son. They have a little heart-to-heart moment. just like in the last chapter. And Saul promises, David, I'm really done trying to kill you this time. David goes, thank you, my father-in-law. I really appreciate it. And then it says, in his heart, David knew that Saul was not done trying to kill him. So instead of staying in Israel, continuing to play this game that he's been playing with Saul for however long now, I mean, David, we know that David is a young boy at the beginning when he's first anointed. And at this point, he's now a general and has 2 wives and is leading an army of men on his own. Clearly, time has elapsed here. David decides this rat race is not going to work for him anymore. He's in too much danger. He possibly is going to die. And so instead, he does the natural thing, which is to go to the one place where he knows nobody is going to hand him over to Saul, which is Philistia. And the relationship he kind of has over there is that everybody's aware of who he is. All of the leaders eventually figure out, wait, isn't this David the guy who killed Goliath? Isn't this David the guy who, they say Saul has killed his thousands and David his 10,000s? And David's kind of like, okay, but I've been faithful here. I've been raiding. He hasn't actually been raiding Israel. He claims he has, but he hasn't actually been doing so. And so they come to a point where there is a battle that's going to take place between the Philistines and the Israelites. And David wants to be present at that battle, but is told that the princes of Philistia don't trust him.
Correct.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I was right on this so far.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah.
Good recap.
Okay. So while David's over in Philistia, minding his own business, Saul, who has very recently made a declaration that witchcraft is banned, puts on a disguise and goes to speak to a witch. David and Saul is just biblical Tom and Jerry is a very good way of putting this. That's a good comment. I like that one. Yeah, so Saul goes to see a witch, and he has just banned witchcraft. And he goes to the witch, and he's like, I need you to do some divination for me. And the witch goes, well, didn't you know that King Saul just outlawed divination? And Saul goes, oh, don't worry about that. I won't tell. And of course...
I think we're going to be okay for some reason.
Yeah, it's like, I think he won't punish you. But of course, the witch does, he requests that the witch bring up whoever he asks. And for some reason, he gets Samuel, who, as we know, is so done with Saul by this point. Samuel has decided long ago that he's just not, he has given up on Saul. I believe the last thing he says to Saul before dying is, you're done. This is over.
It's interesting the level of disconnect Saul has, because he knows that Saul decided that Samuel decided that Saul isn't fit to be king, but he is so committed to this idea that he has to defeat David that he thinks to himself, I know who will help me kill that kid that Samuel said should be king. Samuel will help me kill that kid that Samuel said should be king. Like, there's a huge disconnect between what actually is happening and what Saul thinks should happen. Also, some people are saying that I'm really quiet.
I've got you about as high as you can be.
Oh, is that me? Do I just need to like yell into the microphone? Is this what you all want?
Oh my God.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah. All right. You should be a little bit better. I can also lower myself to match you more, but we'll see. Frightening. Frightened. Yeah. So I think it really does speak to the idea that Saul was genuinely going insane at this point, though, right? Because he does things that a sane man would not do. Yeah, so he's to go to the guy who the last time you spoke to him basically told you that you're doing a terrible job as king, and at one point actually forced you to prophecy against your will. He goes back yet again, and Samuel essentially says to him, the Lord has cut you off. He says he's not hearing your prayers anymore. He will not be there for you. He has no interest in helping you with anything. Oh, and you're going to die tomorrow. Which, to Saul's credit, he does go into battle. He doesn't run away. which I think is
I
interesting.
don't know how much of that is, like, him accepting what God wants or if that's him still doubting that he really isn't supposed to be king. I don't know.
Yeah.
Saul's interesting because I never really know where his loyalty's at.
Yeah, it makes no sense to think of a man who has been told at this point everything that he needs to do to survive. It really does remind me of Belshazzar later on in Daniel, because this is a man who has had a prophet say to him, "Hey, you need to change some things. You got to fix it." And he just at no point decides to take anybody's advice, even God himself's advice. He just ignores it and he continues going on with his terrible decision making and his funding the entire economy with all the javelins he has to buy. Um, like,
It really is a tragedy, like, him going from the king, the anointed one, the humble guy who was afraid to be king initially, but stepped into the role, into someone who fought God so vehemently, he asked God's prophet to kill David.
yeah,
Um, it's tragic. The entire story of Saul's a tragedy.
yeah, and I think there's definitely It's easy to look at Saul as being a villain in this instead of he's actually quite aggressively following the tragic hero archetype, where he starts out as being the chosen one. He is given victories, he's given what he needs, and then he lets his own pride get the best of him. That turns into a fatal flaw, and of course, we end up seeing that eventually, when the battle does come, his own sons are killed, the Philistine archers are peppering his position, and he decides, you know what, I would rather die by my own men's hands than be killed by, I think the term in the Bible is the uncircumcised, which is
Right, right.
certainly one way to refer to it. But he says he doesn't want to be killed by them. He asks one of his men to stab him, basically to put him through with the sword, end his life. That way he's not taken by the enemy. And his own man refuses to do so because he's so afraid of killing the Lord's anointed king that Saul has to then do it himself. Which,
Yep.
brutal.
I find that so interesting because his armor bearer said the exact same thing that young David said
Hmm.
when he remarked that, I will not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed, even though if it may be right in this moment for me to do so. So Saul takes his own life in battle.
Hmm. Yeah, and this is actually not a totally uncommon thing in ancient warfare. There were a lot of occasions where a king, a general, a leader would see it either as too dishonorable to lose a battle and live. They might, because they weren't going to be, chances were they were not going to be killed after the battle. They were either going to be taken prisoner and ransomed, or they were going to be sent home in disgrace. So Saul, like many other kings and generals of the time, decides, I would rather die than be captured. That's not unusual. What I find so striking about it is that he has effectively put himself in a position where he is the Lord's anointed, and so his men are deeply loyal to him. They will not harm him, they will go to their deaths for him. But he does not have the loyalty back to his own people to just simply step down. So
Yeah,
the issue of pride is really, really, I think, the centerpiece of Saul's story. I think that is his fatal flaw: is his pride, his inability
yeah.
to give up, even when he's being told by God Himself, "Hey, stop." Um, Following that, of course, we come to David actually becoming king, but it's not quite as simple as David becoming king now, is it, Isaiah?
Not quite, no.
Do you want to run us through how this one goes?
Yeah, so after the death of Saul, David steps into his role as king. And it says for a long time, David is a righteous king. Initially, even whenever it was announced that Saul was dead, David was brokenhearted because, again, he still loved the Lord's anointed. He always loved Saul. Not to mention that Jonathan was now dead as well, David's
Yeah.
friend. So he had lost Saul and he had lost Jonathan in one fell swoop. And because of that, David is reluctant initially to take the throne, but his men who have been here with him for all this time said, "You said that God would judge Saul, and he did. And now you're to rise to the position that you were always meant to be." So eventually, David takes the throne. And he is as valiant and as I just ripped my headphone cord so hard, my word. He he is as valiant as his men expect him to be.
Mhm.
He is a leader in battle. Israel begins to see a time of peace for some while. I believe David was king for 7 years and 6 months before things start to get wonky. Uh, initially, all goes well. Men like Joab, who were on David's side during his war with
Mhm.
Saul, begin to they begin to go out for him to other lands and to campaign for him. David's doing great. The people love him. His men love him, and all is well. And then nothing bad ever happened. In the end, uh, and that's it. That's it. No,
That's
so
how it went.
that's exactly how it went.
That's how
Yep.
this went.
There's a few stories.
Uh-oh. Hang on. Hang on. I lost you. Oh boy. Give me 1 second, Isaiah.
Hope you all like me holding this
All right, I'm back.
microphone
Sorry
up
about
like
that.
that.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
My AirPods decided to connect to my phone for no reason.
Hold on. This is still. Yeah, you can still see me. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
It went,
You disappeared
everything
for a
froze for a
second,
second. I'm
and
like, am I
yeah, I know.
dead?
I had to fix some
Um,
things. I know. This is the struggle of not having my usual setup.
can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can't hear you.
You
All
can't
of a
hear
sudden,
me?
that's what it is.
Oh my god.
It looks like you're miming. That's so
This
funny.
is a
You're
mess.
like.
Uh, well, now I can't figure out what's wrong. Oh, I was muted apparently.
There you go. Okay, yeah, you're there now.
Wonderful.
There we go. Okay, okay, it's before then. Yep, I was right.
There we go. Got it.
I
We're back.
believe it's 5. Perfect. Excellent. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. At this time, David was Sanhedrin. So David, he went on. Is the story? Since you were muted that whole time, were you giving me were you telling me what chapter it was in? Because I couldn't hear that.
No, I was not.
Okay, hold on. Let me just quickly type in there, so I'm not just sitting here scrolling the whole
You're
time.
fine. I just want to make sure I can see the super chats. For the end of the show. That's mainly what I'm trying to do here.
There we go. Okay. So David is king for some time. And also, I've mentioned this before, but it was very common at this time for, kings, anyone to have multiple wives.
Mhm.
So this isn't an act of um, adultery in itself.
Yeah.
That's not where the problem lies. It is what he does to get that. So
Although it is important to note that having multiple wives was not necessarily the ideal of the time.
yes.
David kind of had to for political purposes.
Here it is. Okay, I found it. Chapter 11. I thought it was like chapter 5 for some reason, whatever. Anyway, so David's been king for quite some time. The conquests are going well, his army is doing well, and everyone loves him. And then one night, while David is walking across the roof, actually I'll just read the verse. And it came to pass at eventide, when David arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman washing herself. and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. At the time, the way that houses were structured is you can't like you don't want to bath and get like steam and dirt and smell like in your house, right? And they didn't have the luxury of, pipes or sewage, obviously. So the easiest thing most people would do is they would have their house, and then on top of their house, they would have their bath, effectively, which was fine because most of the time, every house was one story. So it's not like people were looking down on you, except, of course, the king's palace, which is this
Right.
really big, tall building. So David's walking along the wall of the palace one night, and he looks down and he sees a beautiful woman bathing herself. And it says, and David sent and inquired after the woman. And one said, is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Now, this was a problem because Uriah was one of David's chief generals.
Hmm.
He was a master leader. He was well regarded by all his men, and he was a very righteous man. And it says, and David sent messengers and took her, and she came in unto him, and he lay with her, for she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned unto her house. Now, the phrase she was purified from her uncleanness is debated. There is I won't be too brutal for the sake of the audience who may be listening. There is debate that might meant manners. Okay, so he laid with her, right?
Hmm.
Some think that phrase means there were measures taken so that she wouldn't get pregnant,
Hmm.
because effectively this was an affair.
Yeah.
It is fine if the king takes on a woman to be his wife. It is not fine if the king takes a wife of one of his generals to be his wife. That
Yeah.
is very uncool, as the kids say. So everything was done in secret. She was brought to his house at night. Um, and then this transaction happened, and then she's returned. But it says, and the woman conceived
Hmm.
and sent and told David and said, I am with child. This is immediately an issue, right? Because it has gone from,
Understatement.
uh, yes, it has gone from, oh, she's hot, let's do the do, which is just David acting in lust, into I got the wife of one of my war leaders pregnant. So
And of
she
course,
comes to
Uriah is
David.
not currently there.
Yes,
He's
yes,
away
correct.
fighting the Ammonites.
Uriah is out fighting David's war right now. He is on the front lines of battle. He is far removed. Um, and like Uriah thinks everything's peachy at home. It's mentioned Uriah's actually mentioned in some of the chapters before that he loves
Hmm.
David, that he's a loyal soldier. So while he's out fighting his war, David gets her pregnant. So she comes to him and says, "What do I do?" And says, and David sent Joab. Joab's like David's right hand man,
Hmm.
saying, send me Uriah the Hittite. So Joab goes out, gets Uriah, brings him back to the palace, and his cover for it is he's asking for a report of the war. He's
Hmm.
asking Uriah how everything went, and Uriah says that everything went well, and says, and David said to Uriah, go down to thy house and wash thy feet. And Uriah departed out of the king's house, and there followed him a mess of meat from the king. So this is what David's wanting to do. Again, nowadays we understand pregnancy to the degree that we can like figure out timelines.
Hmm.
Like if the child was born here, we know that 9
Yep.
months earlier it happened, right? But that was all kind of nebulous back then. This
They,
wasn't
they had
common
a
knowledge to everyone.
they had a general idea that it took
Yeah.
9 months for a pregnancy to happen, but it was not quite the
there
science it
there
is today.
there was enough wiggle room that you could, like, who knows, maybe it is 6 months, they don't know, right? And
Yeah.
so he brings Uriah back, and he's like, Uriah, you're doing such a good job. How about this, you go home to your wife tonight. And it says that David sent with him an entourage of meat, right? Like,
Hmm.
have a feast, have a
Yep.
great time, and you spend time with your wife, quality time, in fact.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, intimate quality time. Make sure to be very intimate with your wife tonight, right now. So his idea is that if Uriah goes home with his wife, no one will have any further questions
Hmm.
about the pregnancy. What David did not take into account is Uriah's extreme devotion. So he sends Uriah out, he sends him out with all of this meat, and it says, but Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and went not to his house. And when they had told David, saying, Uriah went not down into his house, David said unto Uriah, camest thou not from thy journey? Why did thou not go down into thy house? So Uriah, he sends him away that night. The next morning he wakes up and Uriah's asleep on the stairs of the palace.
Mm-hmm.
He never went home to be with his wife. So David rightfully is like, why? You've been at war. Why are you sleeping on the staircase? It says, and Uriah said unto David, the ark, talking about the ark of the covenant,
Mm-hmm.
the ark and Israel and Judah abide in tents, talking about they're out in the war.
Mm-hmm.
And my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go into mine house to eat and drink and to lie with my wife? As thou livest and as thy soul liveth, I will not do this thing.
Uriah
For
is just too
one,
good. He's just too good a
for yeah,
man.
for one, like the righteousness of Uriah is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That the king said, "You've earned it. Go enjoy a night with your wife," and then he sleeps on the ground because he says, "My men are out fighting a war. My lord Joab is in a field right now, preparing for battle. Who would I be to go lie with my wife? What would
Mm-hmm.
that be?" But while this is very inspiring, and David should look to this for inspiration, this is not what David wants. Um, because all that he heard was Uriah going, and I lie with my wife, be intimate with my wife. Nay, nay, sir. As a matter of fact, I proclaim to all of Israel, I would not lie with my wife Bathsheba, who lives in that house right there. She definitely will not be pregnant by my hand for the next 6 to 10 months.
It's
That's all
just
David got out of that.
honestly,
So
it is. That's all David hears. You know the meme of like I think it's Homelander from The Boys and just the ringing in the ears is going.
Yep,
It's
yep. Just
that David. It's
so
singular focus.
so the next night, David's like, okay, I've got it. We'll get him drunk. So David invites Uriah to the house again, gets Uriah hammered. It says he was greatly drunk with wine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he sends Uriah out. He's like, surely this drunk idiot will stumble into
Right.
his home and hook up with his wife,
If he
please.
if he won't
And
sleep
then
with his wife sober, he'll definitely do it drunk.
yeah, we'll just get him hammered and he'll hopefully figure out where he lives. I mean, he has to live pretty close to the palace if David could see Bathsheba from right
Exactly.
there. So,
Or
that's
David
not
has the
far of a
best
walk.
vision of any man in history.
Exactly. Yeah, like just go home and deal with it. But it says that it came to pass in the morning that David hold up. And when he had called him, he did eat and was made drunk. And at even he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his lord, but went not down to his house. So he got drunk and just went to the servants' quarters.
Uriah's like, nah, man, Saturdays are for the boys.
They're for the boys. I refuse to be with my wife when my boys are not here to party with me. If my boys don't get with their women, I ain't get with mine. Simple as. Uriah is
Uriah
such.
honestly makes it sound like if David had simply asked, he probably would have said yes.
Yeah,
David was like,
literally, if
can I
David
be
was
with your
like,
wife? He would have been like, yeah, sure, why not?
if
My
David, a
boys.
lot of this leads back to his dishonesty. If David literally was like, we need sons, go work on that, it would have been done.
Yep.
It would have been fine. But no.
I need you to produce more soldiers for me.
Like he's like Uriah was too good of a person, and while this should have been admonished with like grace and people who were like David being proud of him, it wasn't, because David had a problem and he let his own pride and ego get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, this is one of the most heartbreaking passages in the whole Bible to me. It says, and it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. So Joab is the military leader who's on the
Mm-hmm.
front lines. David writes a letter, hands it to Uriah, and says, give this letter to Joab. And it says that he wrote in his letter saying, set ye Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire ye from him that he may be smitten and die.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Uriah's carrying
man,
his own death sentence.
Uriah is carrying his own death sentence. Exactly. The letter says, find the worst part of battle, put Uriah on the front line, and leave him there so that he'll die. Because David's decided, if I can't make people think that this child is Uriah's, I'll make people think that Uriah is dead and we had the child
Mm-hmm.
after he died in marriage. So, but this is a detail a lot of people skim over that is so heartbreaking to me. David, in spite of him wanting to kill Uriah, David knew that Uriah was so loyal that he wouldn't open the letter.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that Uriah, if the king told me to take this letter to Joab, I'm not going to look at it. And he didn't look at it the whole way. And he hands that letter to Joab. And it says, and it came to pass when Joab observed the city. This line, there's a few lines in the Bible that like stick with me, a
Mm-hmm.
few phrases, a few choice of wording. So we know that the letter says, put him in the hottest part of battle. And it says he assigned Uriah to a place where he knew that valiant men were.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that gives me chills every time I read it. Like
You're
it was
he sent him where the bravest men were in the battle.
it is
Like,
understood that the worst part, the hottest part, the most brutal part of battle is where the valiant men were.
mm-hmm.
And Uriah was certainly a valiant man. And Uriah had no question about it. He said, if my king wants me there, that's where my king wants me. And it says, and the men of the city went out and fought with Joab, and there fell some of the people of the servants of David, and Uriah the Hittite died also.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, and there's a couple of things that I think also need to be pointed out about that. One of which is that Uriah is Uriah the Hittite, which means he's not an Israelite. He was not born in Judah. He is not one of David's own people, and he still serves David as if he was his own son. Like,
yeah.
he
Yeah.
has gone and found a king he feels is worthy of his service and devotes everything to him for that king to turn around then and commit the ultimate betrayal. It's
Yeah. He kills him because he wanted to sleep with his wife. And
mhm.
that's all it came down to. And he couldn't have the controversy of that be brought into the open. So
Yeah.
he murdered him effectively, but Uriah was so loyal to the king that he did it without question. He went
And
into battle where the valiant men were.
the other thing that strikes me about it is that when you think about what this is, David is doing to Uriah exactly what Saul did to David. Just sending him out into
Mm.
battle hoping he
Yep.
dies.
Yep. Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
it's the exact same thing that Saul did to him, and David has reached this point in his life where somehow he has lost sight of who he was, and it's really incredible to look at. I do wonder if there's a sort of double meaning even to this story, in that Saul is righteous at the beginning, is given power, and then ends up corrupt, and then David is righteous at the beginning, gets power, ends up corrupt. Solomon, righteous at the beginning, gets power, corrupt. And they all get corrupted in different ways.
Mhm.
Like Saul's is pride, David's is lust, Solomon's is, I'm not even sure, idolatry, I suppose is the best way to put it, but
His I feel his was pride, partially, but primarily lust, I think. There's a passage in which we're jumping the gun on Solomon a bit, but there's a passage in oh man, what it's one of those weird biblical fan fictions I've read. Paradise Lost?
okay.
Yes. Uh it's Paradise Lost whenever the devil is talking to the other demons about how to destroy no, it's Paradise Regained. It's
Okay.
the sequel whenever it's about Jesus
Hmm.
being tempted in the wilderness. The devil is talking about how they're going to tempt Jesus. And someone says, let's tempt him with naked and strange women. Solomon was the wisest man who ever lived, and that took him down, so that will probably take down Jesus.
Hmm.
And David and Satan says, you fool, the reason that women worked on Solomon is because Solomon wanted for nothing. He
Hmm.
had no he never had to toil or fight. Women affect men whenever the man is at a place to allow himself to be affected, but Jesus is here on a mission that won't work on.
Hmm.
But that's an interesting point I never thought of. Solomon was given everything he could possibly want. So what got him was a trial of the eye, a
Hmm.
trial of lust. So I do think his was a sin of lust primarily, just like his
David
father.
or Solomon.
Yeah, Solomon. Yes, yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah. Uh, and
Yeah.
another detail about this that makes me so mad. So Joab sends a letter back to David to tell him like how the battle's going and mention that Uriah died. And after hearing that, hold up, who shot? Yeah, there's all this stuff about hold up, charge the messenger, saying to the like, why did we do this battle? What is it? And he says that Uriah died. And it says, then David said to the messenger who just told him Uriah died, say to Joab, let not this thing displease thee, for the sword devoureth one as well as the other. Which is just a way of saying, oh, well, that's really sad Uriah died, but I wouldn't feel bad about it. You know, people die sometimes.
This
That just
just
happens.
happens, you know.
It just, really, we did everything we could. I
They
wrote the
certainly
letter.
did.
I wrote the letter, and you put him out there, and then look at that, he died. I mean, this was unexpected, clearly.
Who could have foreseen this outcome, right?
Yeah,
It's God's
it's
will.
just, we really shouldn't worry about it though.
Yeah.
I think that we should just move on and grow. I think we can grow from this.
Yeah. And of course, I do wonder what the mindset must have been for some of these men, because David knows everything that happened, that God did to Saul as a result of Saul's transgressions. David goes and does this, and of course he gets punished. It's not this. It's not that he's killed, but God's like, all right, well, the kid's gonna die. Like you don't.
Someone said, I quote, I think Solomon's problem was lust. Solomon with his 700 wives. What makes you say that? He did have 700 wives.
Solomon's out here like, I will repopulate all of Israel myself.
Yeah, that's literally what he tried to do. And
It just sounds like a chore at a certain point.
Yeah, okay, Aiden.
How many?
Whatever you say.
You gotta keep that many people happy, man.
No, I promise you they weren't happy. I promise you that this was not a happy romantic relationship from just what little I know about it. So after that, Bathsheba, of course, it says she mourns for her husband, but then she comes into the palace and, oh, look at that, she's one of David's wives and she's pregnant. What a coincidence. Who could have foreseen this?
And nobody says it's weird.
Yeah, they're just like, yeah, man, what a good man David is to, comfort her in this time. And she was never able to have a son, so he gave her one so fast, just right away. Like, what a leader our king is. Let's make him another parade.
Yep.
So David thinks he got away with it, but it says that this thing displeased the Lord. So do you want me to keep rolling with it?
Yeah, go for it. You're doing a great job.
So after this happens, it says this thing displeased the Lord. We skipped over a lot of chapters about David's early time as king, about what he did coming into power as king. And one of the prophets that are mentioned in his rise of power as king is a prophet named Nathan. And it's mentioned that Nathan, the most vile things I've ever read get said in this Bible chat. This is a Christian Minecraft server, people.
Just don't read the chat.
I made the mistake of glancing over, and it's like getting hit with a truck. What the heck? Okay.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Do not
we're gonna
read the
keep
chat.
talking. We're gonna keep. God sees you anyway. So
the Lord is with us.
Nathan? Yes. So Nathan is a prophet who is directly in line and in the teachings of Samuel, right? So Nathan is, again, one of these righteous men who are watching the politics and temptations of the kingship happen around him, but he is not directly related for it. Nathan is a mouthpiece for God, not one who cares about, kings or dynasties or what have you. He is appropriately removed from David's rulership.
Yeah.
Right. So Nathan, it says, and the Lord sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him, and he said rather than read the verses, I'm going to give the short version of this story so everyone can get along. So let me make sure I've got some of the details right. Children. Yes. So Nathan, the prophet, who David knows, by the way. David and Nathan have had a good relationship up until, David pulled the whole, I'm going to kill this man to sleep with his wife thing.
Nathan's like, that's not very cash money of you.
And Nathan said, that's not very cash money of you. And this is how he does that. He walks into the king's palace. This is one of my favorite images of the whole Bible. This lone prophet walking into the palace, a young prophet. And he walks up to David, and he doesn't say hello. He doesn't say why he's here. He doesn't ask David anything. He just starts telling a story. He walks up and says, there were two men, one rich man and the other a poor man. It says the rich man had so many flocks and fields of sheep. He had everything he could possibly want. The rich man had fields and fields of sheep and cattle. It says, but the poor man had nothing. He was poor. All that the poor man had to his name was one little lamb. He
Mhm.
had a single lamb, but it says because he had that one lamb, the poor man loved that lamb so much. He
Mhm.
cared for it, he nourished it, he grew a relationship with it, and the lamb and the poor man grew up together. It says that he loved the lamb so much that he would feed the lamb off of his own table, and that he would drink of his own cup, that it would sleep at night on his chest. The two of them were so close that the man loved the lamb as if it was its own child, as if it
Mhm.
was his child, right? So the
Right.
rich man has all these giant fields of sheep, and the poor man has one little lamb who he loves very much. But it says that one day a traveler came to the rich man, and the rich man, it says, hold up, let me read this. And there came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd to dress for the wayfaring man that was come unto him. So it was typical in this time, if you were friendly with someone and they were traveling, that you would offer them food. Food was very hard to come by at the time. So if someone comes to your house and you have food, it was the righteous thing to offer it to them.
Mhm.
So a traveler comes by the rich man's house one day and asks for food, but the rich man doesn't want to give any of his lamb. He doesn't want to kill any of the hundreds and hundreds of sheep that he has. So instead, the rich man steals the little lamb from the poor man,
Mhm.
slaughters the lamb, and then uses it to feed the traveler.
Mhm.
So this is a story of greed. It is a story of someone who doesn't care for the riches and wealth he has, so he decides to take what small riches were precious to this one person. He decides to do a horrific act of envy, so that he doesn't have to lose anything. It doesn't have to want for anything. And you probably know where this story's going, but
Mhm.
David did not know where this story is going. Because after David is told all of that, it says, and David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. And he said to Nathan, as the Lord liveth, as the Lord liveth, the man that has done this thing shall surely die.
Mhm.
So, so Nathan relays that whole story. And then David's like, I'm going to kill him instantly. We're going to go out, we're going to find that rich man, and we're going to slaughter him. We got to. We have to kill that guy. So after David says that, he says, and he shall restore the lamb fourfold because he did this thing and because he had no pity. So David is on a very high horse talking about how they're going to murder this rich man for taking this poor man's little lamb. It says, and Nathan said to David, thou art the man. One of my favorite lines in the Bible. Thou art the man. I imagine him standing there in front of the king's palace by himself in the robes of Aaron. Thou art the man. Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I anointed thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul. And I gave thee thy master's house and thy master's wives into thy bosom, and gave thee the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that, oh man, this is one of, the way it's phrased is so good. I gave thee the house of Israel and of Judah, and if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. The way
Mhm.
that is phrased, oh, it breaks my heart.
Mhm.
Nathan is saying, he's talking from God. Nathan is speaking God's voice right now. That's what the prophets did. He says, being God, I gave thee the palace and the throne you're sitting on right now. I gave you all of the riches Israel had. I gave you all of the women you could ever want. I gave you all of the food and the luxuries and the life you have. And if that had been too little, I would have happily given you more. Oh, it hurts. Like, think about how much God has watched over David every step of the way. He has taken him out of the treachery of Saul. He has given him this life. He took David from a shepherd boy in a field to the king of a nation. He has taken David so far beyond his wildest dreams. And it's like God is crying to him. He says, and if that was too little, David, you should have asked. I would
Mhm.
have been so happy to give you more. Oh, it
Yeah.
hurts because we see like how far David has fallen. When Saul, if Saul did this kind of thing, we'd be like, yeah, It's Saul, duh.
Yeah.
But to see David, the shepherd king, the boy who was made to be so much, come to this level, and then God says, if that had been too little. Oh, it
Hmm.
kills me. And not to mention Nathan being like, "Thou art the man." It goes
Yeah.
one of this is one of again one of my favorite portions in the Bible.
It really
So he
is.
says,
Some of the allegory that gets used by the prophets is just some of the most incredible writing. the
"Yes,
the
yeah,
things they were able to think of
yeah,
to
yeah."
illustrate
Like,
these points.
man, if that had been too, I think about that all the time. Like, there's several verses that like break my heart when I think about them. That like they stick with me, right,
Yeah.
in a good way. And man, there's so many times that I'll be thinking about like what I have,
Hmm.
like all the things I've been blessed with, and I'll think about anytime I catch myself being envious or like I want more, I want to do this, I want to do that.
Hmm.
I always think of myself if that had been too little. Like I like when God's saying that, He's not saying, "Oh, was this too little?" It's rhetorical. He's saying, um, if the kingdoms of the world were too little, David, I would have given you more.
Hmm.
But it wasn't too little, right? And I think of that to myself, if that had been too little, is it really too little, or am I just getting a big head? Man, it's such a
Yeah.
beautiful passage. So anyway, he
I mean,
continues.
looking at the history of it, though, he did give David. He gave him Edom and Ammon and Moab and everything from the Hittite Empire down to Egypt. He gave him everything.
If it existed, David had control of it, right? But it wasn't
Yeah.
his captain's wife. He didn't have that. If that had been too little. I love it. Anyway, it's so good, man. It goes so hard. Anyway, um he's so Nathan's still speaking again in the voice of God. Wherefore hast thou despised the commandment of the Lord to do evil in his sight? Thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and hast taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. Now
Hmm.
therefore the sword shall never depart from thine house, because thou hast despised me, and hast taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be thy wife. So he's saying you use the sword to kill Uriah. Not only that, but you couldn't even use your own sword. You had to
Yep.
use the children of Ammon, the godless devil worshippers. You had to use their sword to do it because you were too cowardly to do it yourself. So therefore the sword will never depart from your house. Thus saith the Lord, behold, I will raise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and give them to thy neighbor, and he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of the sun. So he's saying, hey, all these women that you have
Hmm.
who previously were loyal to you, who were your wives, they wanted to be happy with the king, you can forget that, because since you wanted to have this secret affair of yours, it says what you've done out of the sight of men, now your punishment will be brought to the light. And
Hmm.
it's from there, it talks about it throughout the Bible and in historical accounts. The wives of David were known for sleeping around.
Yeah.
It
For
was
not
known that
being loyal
David,
to David.
exactly, that none of them were. They all ran from it. It's like, oh, you you wanted one woman to be disloyal against your husband? How about every woman that you have? Just
God's like, I even gave you more wives than anybody else needed, and you still needed another
and
wife.
it still wasn't enough. If that had been too little, it still wasn't enough. Yeah.
Ugh.
Um So all this is said, and David immediately realizes he did a very bad thing. He says unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, the Lord also hath put away thy sin, thou shalt not die. Which again, this is a testament to God's grace, God's mercy. We saw that several times with Saul, when Saul continuously messed up and God kept giving him more chances.
Hmm.
And so he's doing the same thing here. He's still going to get punished. You still can't just kill a man to steal his wife and get away with it. There's still punishments. The sword will never depart from his house. Um, but and also, as we're going to see in later stories with David, David's children, this whole statement of the sword never departing from his house, that is going to come to fruition
Hmm.
in very strong and direct ways, especially with the story of Absalom. So
Yeah.
that like David is going to pay for this, but he's saying that you're not going to die,
Yeah.
that you're
Do
still king.
you want to cover Absalom right now, or do you want to wait on that?
No, we can do Absalom. If we even do Absalom, we can do it at some point in the future.
Okay.
I'm just saying that in the future, the sword stuff,
Yeah.
God was
It comes
correct. The
back.
sword will not depart from his house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so he goes on and he continues to talk about the situation. He says, "By this deed, thou hast given great occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme. The child also that is born unto these shall surely die." So he's saying the child that Bathsheba is pregnant with, it will not come to live. It will be stillborn. And also, so you're responsible for your son's death now. And also, you are the king of God's people and you behave this way. What do you think that looks like to all the other people of the earth?
Hmm.
If God's chosen man murdered someone to sleep with his wife, that's not a really good look, is it?
Very early version of with great power comes great responsibility.
Of- Thou hast given great occasion to the enemies to blaspheme. With great power comes great
Yep.
responsibility. Yeah, same thing.
Oh.
um,
And then, of course, I mean, David at one point, I think it's after all of this, David wants to put the Ark of the Covenant into a temple and build it and, create this great edifice to God and all of that. And God's like, "Mm, not you."
yeah,
So we can
yeah,
see
that
that God has
man.
basically lost faith in David by the end.
Hmm. So a lot of you have probably heard of like the temple in Jerusalem, at least mentioned in passing,
Hmm.
right? So the temple in Jerusalem was like a big deal because it was always said that eventually, whenever Israel becomes a nation, with the king and all that, that there would be a temple for the works of God to be stored in, the works that eventually became the Bible, for the ark to be put in. This was promised all the way back at Moses.
Yeah.
And now David's like, time to build it. And God says, no. Like, I wish, David, but you lost that chance.
Yep.
Your son will build it, but you will not. Which is hard, which God never removed his promise that David's lineage would be the one to build the temple, but David lost the opportunity to be the
Yep.
one to build the temple.
Hmm.
So because of this, David lost out on a lot. He was punished greatly, uh, but he didn't die. He continued to be king, and he was very regretful for it. Talks about how David spent days and days in fasting and agony and screaming. Um, and eventually it says David comforted his wife Bathsheba, and went in unto her and lay with her, and she bare a son and called his name Solomon, and the Lord loved him.
I do
The,
think that part's interesting, though, that it's all of this is because of Bathsheba. Or,
yep,
well, because of David's inability to not just, ignore Bathsheba.
right.
And yet, the son that is chosen to be the one that builds the temple, the one that God loves most, ends up being the second son of Bathsheba.
To me, that has always been God's MO. Because
Hmm.
like think about like Paul, right? The
Yeah.
father of missions. Where did Paul come from?
He was a tax collector.
He was a serial killer. He hunted down and murdered the early church. Like he was paid by the Roman government to sell women into bondage. Like what a guy. It says that he would find families of Christians, he would crucify the fathers and sell the women and children to indentured servitude. That's like the most evil man who ever lived. You can't get worse than that. And God saw that guy and said, "You're going to start the church. You are
Hmm.
going to be the first missionary." And Paul became one of the strongest Christians to ever live. So
Yeah.
God has a habit of taking people who, to us, are no good, disgusting, nothing, and then using them to
Hmm.
prove that He can use anyone. There is never a point that you are too far removed from God.
And that appears so many times. I mean, we look at who Moses is. Moses was a murderer.
Yeah.
And then even you can carry it all the way through to Christ. It's
Yep.
said that the Messiah will be a Nazarene. Well, that doesn't necessarily just mean a man from Nazareth. Nazareth was seen as a backwater. It was seen as
Hmm.
a podunk little village that nothing
Yeah.
good could come of. And
Yeah.
what's Christ? He's a Nazarene. So you
Hmm.
get this constant, God taking people who are either, I mean, if you look at Saul, even was what was he, the lowest of the highest house?
Yes. Yeah. He was the highest in the lowest
Highest in the
house.
lowest house. David was the lowest in the highest house. So
Yep.
the Bible is full of these inversions of somebody is very powerful, they screw up, and their failure is worked into the redemption of the Jews. Which I
Right.
just think, like, it's fascinating to look at that.
It is a beautiful story that, despite everything we do to turn ourselves from God to leave him, God never actually goes away.
Oh no.
He's always there. And to the degree that Bathsheba, the unity of David and Bathsheba to us is like a horrible, evil thing
Mm-hmm.
that shouldn't happen. But through that unity, they make a child, and it says the Lord loved him.
Yep.
Like, it's a mercy that's hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
But God continues to show time and time again.
And it's
So
interesting in the context of the sins of the father are passed on to the son as well, because it seems
yeah.
like there's almost the grace of the father is passed on to the son to counteract it. Because Solomon
Mhm.
didn't do anything wrong, and yet God kept the promise to David nonetheless.
Yes, yeah, yeah, he was like, "You've messed up, but your son is innocent." Well, he doesn't
He doesn't
Solomon's not
exist yet,
innocent
but
forever, but at that point, he was
yeah,
innocent, yeah. The young baby Solomon was innocent, he's like, "That baby is gonna build the temple."
the whole thing with all
Um,
the idolatry later, not great.
yeah.
But
All the fornication and whatnot, yeah, other than
I
that.
do think it's a little funny how like before David, it's like you can have one, maybe two wives if necessary, and then with David, it's like you kind of need to have 8 to 12. Then Solomon's just like, all right, well, I see this as license to do whatever I want.
700. Yeah. Yeah,
What
exactly.
Solomon's
It's
like
hard to comprehend that number. 700 wives?
700
What?
wives, just so many.
Yeah, but Solomon had all that. Like, and I won't. It's the same with his father. Solomon had that. It says he asked
Arguably,
God for
Solomon had more
wisdom.
blessings than his father because he had a peaceful
Yes.
reign for the most part.
He had a peaceful reign. He had 700 wives, and it says he was the wisest man to ever live. And you know what that guy did? He worshiped demons. This is unreal. Are you serious?
Well,
It drives me insane. But hey, that's power for you, right? That's what happens
yeah,
whenever someone decides that they know best, right? That they
exactly.
can take charge. It's heartbreaking. But yeah, so Solomon always makes me furious because it's like 700 wives, and you had to find a demon. You didn't get it.
You had all these blessings and one job, and you failed.
Yep, yep.
All right, I do have to
What a man.
apologize to the viewers because I it's time to switch to super chats, but that means that there's going to be spotty moments where you're not going to be able to see us for a second while I actually go check on the super chats. But I'll switch us back over.
Will
Um,
they still be able to hear us?
they will be able to hear us still. There'll just be like little spots where we cut out and we're not visible. Um,
Oh, cool. I could be like a little ghost. I
well,
can be like a little
maybe
ghost guy.
if my computer will my
I could
studio.
also probably help you out.
Yeah, if you want
Are
to
you
take a
just
look through them.
are
For
you
some
just scrolling
reason,
up in chat, or are you switching over
I'm
to?
switching over on the studio side, but it's giving me some trouble right now.
Oh.
So give me 1 second while it reloads that page.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we're invisible. Woo,
Right, right. A little
creepy.
creepy, huh?
I'm making the weirdest faces right now. I hope the camera doesn't cut back.
I will let you know when the camera's about to cut back. How's that sound?
Ah.
All right, we got a bunch here. So here we go. First one is from Ryan Whitcop for $5, and he said, "Thank you so much for the show. It's changed my life so much. I've had less anxiety, and I've reconnected with faith. Always looking forward to the show."
Aw, that's so
Yeah.
cool, Ryan.
Oh,
Congratulations. Happy to
thank
hear
you.
that.
I'll
So,
basically
someone
I'll
said,
switch back and forth between when we get to stuff that actually has discussion associated with it. Otherwise, it's
okay.
gonna get confusing.
Someone said, oh, you can say you're a holy ghost. Badumps.
All right. Sheeta Skunker for 10 said, "God save the internet connection." Yeah.
Hey, we
Woo.
got through it.
We got through it. Boone R. Hardaway said for 10 said Matthew 5:14. That's why you guys are growing so popular. Also, thanks, you helped me grow my faith. Also, Wendigoon, would you ever make a video about Scorsese's The Last Temptation of the Christ? And I'm gonna go look at Matthew 5:14 really quick because I don't have that
I've
memorized.
considered making a video about the last temptation of Christ. It's not biblical. Like things like Paradise Regained are biblical. Like hold on, let me clarify. They're not like accurate biblical. They
Mhm.
are Holy Spirit. It No, hold on. That would be the Bible if it was
The
Holy Spirit
attempt was
inspired.
made to not blaspheme.
Thank you. Yeah, it was made by people who care about the Bible. and like wanted it.
Like The Chosen is supposed to be. I haven't
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
it.
like they cared and wanted to do it justice. Whereas The Last Temptation of Christ is more so just a story, and that's why it's fairly vulgar and exploitive of
Hmm.
the concept of the story in parts. But I've considered talking about like that before, right? The difference between a good faith adaptation and a bad faith adaptation. So yes.
I'm not sure that I would be able to be polite enough to make a video on that subject.
I've thought about making a video about that in regards to exorcism
Hmm.
stories and stuff, because there's some stories that are good faith exorcism that actually care, and others that are just exploitive, and kind of like what the difference is,
Right.
how it relates to actual demonology and stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be a good one. Another part of that comment, the Matthew 5:14, ye are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hid. So I appreciate that. That's a very kind statement.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Yeah. That's why we do it. All right. Tactical Bacon for 10 said, hey, you guys, just wanted to thank you for all the hard work and dedication. Between this and the videos regarding religion of Wendigoons has helped me come back to the faith, especially Paradise Lost. That's all you, bud. I can't hear you. Why can't I hear you? Okay, now I can hear you. Did it do it again? It did it again. All right.
I'm going to sit here. I'm
I'm
going to
back.
talk to
I'm
you.
back. I'm back.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. It was.
Okay, cool. I can hear you.
I thought it was a glitch last time. It was. It turns out it's if I just switch the AirPods. It's like, I see you've decided to
Oh,
stop.
it's time.
But yes, if you wanted to respond to what Tactical Bacon said, I didn't hear.
Was Tactical Bacon the one who said we're a light on a hill?
No, that was Boone Hardaway. Tactical Bacon
What
said, hey, you
did
guys, just want to thank you for all your hard work and dedication. Between this and the videos regarding religion of Wendigoons, help me come back to the faith, especially Paradise Lost.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you very much, Tactical Bacon. I appreciate that.
Let's see what else we have here. Christopher Campbell for 5 said, thank you so much. You both brought me closer to God than ever, and Aiden's videos on Norse Celtic mythology has inspired me to go back to school. Well, thank you.
Wow.
I'm glad
Very
that we
cool.
were able to help you on
Congratulations.
2 accounts. I mean, the mythology and folklore around the world are just so incredible, and you'll start to see through lines between history will start to make more sense to you, and religion, like observing even Christianity. When you understand the other religions of the world, it will help you understand Christianity and why Christianity is unique in some ways and what it has in common with others. And I think that that's a very good pursuit. Very worthwhile. Smooth Operator for 10 said, y'all have brought thousands closer to Christ. Wow, that's a
That's very
statement.
kind.
That hearing it put that way is wow. That's needs a lot. Myself included, you are true disciples of God and responsible for turning people towards salvation. Bravo, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Ryan Whitcop for 5 said, I've heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. Can you confirm this? I have heard.
But you don't really care. Yeah, that lyric about you
Mhm.
saw her bathing on the roof, her
Right.
beauty and the moonlight overthrew you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, overthrew you.
Yeah, yeah. I do like the wording of that because it
Yeah.
really did. It's like, ah, you were David, the Lord's man, but I guess she was really hot, bro.
Hope it was worth it.
Hope it was worth it. Yep.
This is Paladin's Templar said David and Saul is just biblical Tom and Jerry. We read that one earlier.
Yep.
Scrin99 for 10 said Saul needs more javelins.
This all would have been solved if Uriah had one javelin.
Adam Espinoza says, thank you, Aiden and Isaiah. You guys brought me into the faith and saved me with this podcast and videos. My question is, how do I deal with atheists arguing that belief is irrational and unscientific? Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. That means a lot. But as for the second part of the question, how do you address arguments with atheists? Um, I mean, I think the idea that the argument that belief in a higher power is irrational is subjective. First and foremost, there is no rationality to believing that the first of all, if you go with the Big Bang theory, that's not rational either. It breaks several fundamental laws of science. It can't possibly have happened with our current understanding of science. So what you then get from that is, all right, well, either our understanding of the physical past is flawed, or there's a creator. Can be either. But to say that it's irrational to look at the current body of knowledge and say, based on what I see, I feel that it is more likely that this was created than that it spontaneously came into existence is not irrational at all. That is in no way an irrational thing to believe. And I would argue that it's rather irrational to be an atheist if we look at the vast majority of people throughout history who have decided that they all believe that it was far more likely that this was the creation of a intelligent mind than an accident. And even atheists are starting to come around to simulation theory to a large extent, which is just like Reddit monotheism. What?
I'm sorry. I don't mean to. I didn't mean to laugh while you were having a serious conversation. Someone in the chat is named Saul Spear Lover 420.
That's phenomenal.
So good.
I love it.
Sorry. Continue.
Okay. Girk roleplay for 5 said, so these are both for Wendy. Am I allowed to put you into the Lore Lodge Hearts of Iron 4 mod? He's making a Hearts of Iron 4 mod with Lore Lodge characters.
Please feel free.
Please, okay. And on a more serious note, what made you sure of your faith?
Man, what a juxtaposition. So I guess he means faith as in like the overarching concept of God and
That's what I'm
belief
thinking.
rather than like specific belief patterns or whatever. So I guess overall about God, um, I used to answer this question and say I like to believe, but that's not true. I believe, I don't like to believe, I do truly believe that the human experience is not incidental.
Mhm.
That concept that I love, thought, consciousness, will are incredible earth-shattering ideas that we experience in different parts all at once every day. And it is miraculous beyond any other concept in creation or in the universe. Um, and the combination of those blessings, those profound instruments that have been used in us, as well as seeing this miraculous beauty that exists in the world between creation, between people, between relationships, it is not incidental. Not I believe it's not incidental. It is not incidental. There is no way the human experience is anything but curated and divine. And because of that, so
That one's
that's why I
getting
believe
that's
that.
getting clipped and quoted.
um, so in tandem with that, that is why I don't believe that we are an accident. That means we have to be here from something, right? That we are not incidental, we are purposeful. So what is that creator? And all of human experience, in my opinion, points towards one universal truth. Different religions have different aspects of that truth, I feel, different stories, different legends that connect and carry out across thousands and thousands of years of culture of history. But every single one of them point to Jesus Christ. Everything that came before him pointed forward, and everything that came after him pointed back. He is the nexus and the purpose of the human experience. And if we are created, if we are divine beings, then he is undoubtedly a piece of the creator. So it is, I am more sure of Jesus being the Son of God and the sacrifice of sins than I am that my name is Isaiah and I'm sitting here in a chair right now. As firm as I believe there is air in my lungs, I believe Christ is King. So it's never really been a point that I've been I like, sure, I have questioned it, uh, in the healthy way of, I want to know why I believe this, but I have never gone looking for an answer that I haven't found. So,
You just say these things and they come out like Plato said them. Like, we are
I'm
not
really
incidental, we
good.
are purposeful. Screw you. You and your just off the cuff philosophical remarks. If you think I'm not making a meme of that quote,
Good. I hope you do, and I hope you feel bad about it. I hope it
I
hurts.
don't. It's going to be beautiful. It's going
Look,
to be a beautiful meme.
look, all I'm saying is I am really good at pretending to be goofy and haha all the time while also thinking and being intent on the world around me. I just can't remember which half is the pretending part. One half of me is certainly fake. I can't remember which one was the fake one.
I know that the one of you saying you killed 3 to 5 children was real.
That came from a deep place. Yeah, that had to be real.
All right. I have a few more pulled up here now. I figured out a way to do this without necessarily having us pop off screen the whole time. Um, Nora Vanguard for 10 said, one channel you might like, Windy, is Answers in Genesis. They do young Earth science essays and did an interesting series on Y chromosomes, tracking, and how it lines up with a 6,000-ish year timeline. Do you have thoughts?
What that was none of those words were in the Bible. What was
I'll reread it. One channel you might like is Answers in Genesis. They do young Earth science essays and did an interesting series on Y chromosome tracking and how it lines up with a 6,000-ish year timeline.
Mm.
I don't know where you stand on young Earth
Oh,
creationism.
I've always been about 6,600 years. That's always been
Gotcha.
my yeah.
All right, that might be one for you to take a look at. Senor Chuck E. Cheese for 20 said, first time I've been able to pick up live. I enjoy the work y'all do because it's really nice to listen to at work. Also, I think you two just stole my money from one I sent earlier, so enjoy the second try, lol. Well, thank you. I appreciate that you tried a second time. I hope YouTube didn't steal your money. I'm not sure if there's a way for me to refund super chats, but if I go and I find one that doesn't have any text associated with it with your name, then I will refund it if I can. I'm not sure how possible that is. But yeah, I will help if I can, and if not, then send me an email and I can give you a discount code for like Lore Lodge merch or something. That's the best I can really do. Nate Will for $4.99 said, during a lull in my faith, I started reading 1st and 2nd Samuel to get excited about reading my Bible again. Both are very entertaining with great lessons. I agree wholeheartedly. The first Samuel, especially with just the javelins, just the number of like little. I forget who I was talking to about this, but the other day I was sitting with somebody who's not a Christian, and I was just talking through the parts of the Bible where you really just do get genuine entertainment or literature, something interesting that isn't just reading scripture. It's more than that. And people often look at the Bible and they go, I don't feel like reading, a holy book right now. Read it because it's a fun story. There's cool stuff that happens. There are things that you might be able to whip out at the dinner table every now and then that are going to be conversation starters. And if you're of the faith, then it gives you a closer spiritual relationship. It allows you to witness and to proselytize. But yeah, I mean, there are so many good little moments in the Bible that are interesting or entertaining or funny, and I think a lot of people miss out on them because they think of the Bible as being just a religious book and nothing more, when it's full of poetry and storytelling and history as well. Let's see. Jack Garcia for 20 said, thank you so much to you both. It was because of you guys I chose to deepen my faith in God. Yeah, I lost it for a second. And yesterday I gained the confidence to teach the youth group for the first time, and I'm again very grateful. That's awesome. I'm glad that you're teaching youth group. That is fantastic. That is one of the best things you can do.
Congratulations.
Pip Pignus for 10 said, "Hey guys, this show and God has really helped with my anxiety, and I just applied to my dream job, so I wanted to ask if you guys had any tips for getting over my anxiety for my uncertain future. Thanks." Um, Isaiah, do you have any thoughts?
About getting over anxiety.
Yeah, about the future.
The future is something inevitably to be worried about. There's no solution I can give that's like, yeah, just stop. Because that's not that's not how anxiety works. Um, but in times of anxiousness, it's important. For one, it's important as a Christian to remember that our lives are in the hands of the Redeemer, and that if we trust Him to save us, then we can surely trust Him to get us through the day, um, whatever may come of it. But even aside from that, like, you are you are the captain of your own destiny, in the sense that you decide how your destiny will play out. So if there are things you are anxious about, if there are circumstances in your life that make you anxious, that make you worried about things, change them. There is nothing saying that you have to stick with something just because it's familiar. If something bothers you about yourself or about your situation, get rid of it. Like, just
100%.
do the thing effectively.
I like to tell this story. I'm sure you've heard me tell it before, but um, December of 2020, well, January of 2020, really, but end of December 2020, I got dumped by a girl that I was very, very, very much in love with, and at the moment, it felt like my entire world was crashing down. I didn't get it. I didn't understand what I had done, like why I wasn't able to stay with this person, and the thing was, there were all the many times that I screamed at God for being unfair. But what happened was that it made me realize that I really wasn't happy in my career. And I decided that I wanted to go to grad school instead. And I applied to grad schools. I got into a grad school. And then I quit my job in June of 2021. I gave my 2 weeks notice. I was sitting down just weekend before my classes, or not, sorry, weekend before my last day, which was a Tuesday. Was sitting scrolling through TikTok because I had nothing to do. Saw a post that said, what's a conspiracy theory you can't prove but you 100% believe in? And that is when I made the first video that would become the Lore Lodge. So that
Hmm.
me getting dumped led very directly to this entire thing existing for me, to my current career, to this channel, to the Lore Lodge, the fact that I'm down here in West Virginia for Pop Culture Crisis guest hosting for a week. All of that came from that one little moment of pain. And what I always tell people is that December 30th, 2020, I really did not understand. And I was scared of the future. Now, I totally get why it happened. And I know that in the future, there will be more things that I don't understand. There will be times when I feel like I've been abandoned or that I feel lost. But I know that it's all leading to something. So that can kind of help with the anxiety, is understanding that as long as you keep the faith and as long as you keep on chugging, it will turn out okay in the end. It's not necessarily going to be easy, and there's going to be moments where you're terrified and you feel lost, but you will be able to keep the faith and keep on moving, and things will turn out eventually. But it's not the kind of thing that's ever going to cure your anxiety, but it might give you some comfort. I know I still am anxious all the time. What else do we have here? Also, everyone is responding to somebody in the chat who I'm not seeing. That's weird. Let's see. Benjamin Chapman for 20 said, "Would King Saul killing David be considered filicide?"
If you want it to be.
I think it would technically count. Filicide,
If Saul killed
fratricide.
David,
Yeah. If Saul killed David, would it be considered filicide?
filicide's just your own children, though, right?
I'm not positive. Fratricide is your sibling.
Right.
I think filicide.
Matricide is your wife.
Yeah, filicide I think would be children because I think it's the same root as filioque.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
patricide is your husband's. Yeah, it'd be your children.
Yeah. Um,
Things I
Norberto
know offhand for
Rodriguez.
some reason.
Right. And then it comes up when you're just like at a casual function. And everybody's
Yeah,
like,
like,
why do
right,
you know
yeah.
that? What's
Well,
wrong with
talking
you?
about the Bible, it's like, yeah, oh, you wanna know all the quirky names for murdering your family?
Yeah. Just really quick aside, I was doing a video, it's coming out Friday. Debunked the absolute hell out of the Tartaria conspiracy. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. Um,
The guy who had the passport, that one?
no, totally way bigger, way bigger
Okay,
thing.
gotcha.
But I really took this channel Mind Unveiled to task on it because they did a video where Charlie had somebody had told Charlie to look at Tartaria, and so he did. And in his stream, he pulls up one of my videos really quick and then goes, "Wait, no, don't debunk it. I want to know what it is." Closes it down and then goes and looks at their channel. So I was like, perfect. I'm in this video. I will do this. I forget how we got here. I forget what I was saying.
You were we were talking about matricide, patricide, and all that.
Yeah, I don't know how we got here. I
It's
had a
even
point.
funnier if you can't remember and you just you're like, "Yeah, so I was talking about killing your husband." You're like, "That reminds me of Moist Critical." So
Why did it remind me of Critical and Tartaria and all that? I cannot remember. I cannot recall why.
you're talking about using obscure dark information in normal settings.
Yeah, it's not going to come to me.
Gotcha.
The even though I've been off of it for like 2 years now, the Zoloft and the Ativan still screw with my memory. Don't ever do those drugs unless you absolutely have to, kids. For the record, they were prescribed to me to manage my anxiety. I wasn't just casually doing them, but like your doctor will be like, it's fine. It will change you. Norberto Rodriguez Jr. for 2 says, how accurate is the movie King David? I have not seen the movie King David.
I've also not seen
I was
it.
not aware there was a movie called King David.
I would love to make a movie about it one day for $800 bajillion, but be an insane budget.
800 bajillion? I would agree with you. Let's see.
Give or take.
Isaac Otto for 1999 said, hey guys, I love both of your content. Thank you, Isaac. Aiden, I was wondering if you were going to make the Saul has hid himself amongst the stuff soon. Yes, I need to put that on a shirt. I will write that down right now. And then he says, also, Isaiah, I was wondering if you were planning on making non-Weird Bible biblical content soon.
Yeah, the stuff I've been doing with like the Paradise Regained and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there will be more of that for sure.
Beautiful.
I actually kind of want to make a video about David. Go like the Shepherd King story.
Do it.
So yeah, absolutely there will be.
There we go. That's written down now too. Adam Espinoza, Tim J94 for 20 said, hey, Mr. Mattis, would you be able to read my email about questioning my faith so I can get you and Wendigoon's advice on it? Please and thank you guys for opening up my mind to Christ. I hope I can fully find my belief in God. I absolutely can take a look at it. I will write that one down as well. What was it was Tim J94. J94 email. I'm trying to get better about writing down the things I need to do because I tend to forget them. Adam Espinoza for actually, you know what? I think maybe he meant read it right now, which seems very, very plausible now that I think about it. I'm just stupid. Give me 1 second because I will pull it up. I don't know why I didn't consider that. You might need to let me know what exactly the name it was under was. Tim J90, there it is. Okay. What advice can you give someone who wants to believe and open their heart to God, but feels as though something is stopping them, and that even when they pray, it feels like their heart just isn't into it? I'm afraid I have been atheist for so long that it's making it hard for me to truly open my heart because I keep doubting no matter how much I want to believe. Thanks to you, Wendigoon, and the character Joshua Graham, I've opened my mind more to Christianity, but that being said, as I mentioned, it feels like I'm still struggling to believe. I went to a church service at my friend's church, and I think I'll be going again. I was going to super chat the Weird Bible podcast, but I didn't see it. Okay, yeah, there we go. I understand if you don't have an answer. I know advice like this can be a huge ask. So, 1 second, let me get myself oriented here. So as far as that goes, my opinion with is going to be a little less than spiritual and a little bit more psychological. Because the spiritual aspect, I think you want to believe, and it seems like you're trying to open your heart. I'm assuming you've asked God for the wisdom to understand and to be brought back into the fold. I'm sure that you have done those things. If you haven't yet, that's obviously a great first step, is to actually sit and pray for the wisdom to understand and for God to open his heart to you so you may open your heart to him. But then there's also the psychology aspect of it, which is that it probably feels alien to you to be praying, to be going through the motions of religion again after so long in disbelief. And what I would say to that is that you can probably help yourself by being with others, more so than just trying to find it within your own heart. If you have Christian friends, text them, say, hey, every Sunday, every other Sunday or something like that, can we go get coffee and just talk about the Bible? Can we go talk about the Lord?
Sorry, the
You
intrusive
let
thought
the intrusive
win.
thought win.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's like,
Sorry.
if what you're interested in is that, remember that you can pray to God. You can speak directly to God. But when two or more of you are gathered in his name, he is there with you. And I think that if you stick to that, remember that part, that will help you in making your way back. Remember that other Christians are there for the purpose of guiding you back. Don't try and do it on your own. You don't need to do that. And you might fail if you do. Remember to lean on others, because that is what Christianity is about. It is about the community. It is about everybody coming together to support one another and support being a better Christian. Is how I would go about it. I don't know, Isaiah, if you have anything to add or disagree with.
Um, in general, seek out God. A lot of people talk kind of abstractly, like, oh, what did God mean by this? What does God mean by this? But he left us an entire book telling us exactly what he means for any given topic. So seeking out the Bible is always the best thing to do. And like Aiden said, find fellowship and communion with people, because that is the second most important aspect of our lives, I would say, next to soul winning, would be fellowship. So yeah, seek out people.
Yeah. Great. I think it's good advice. Let's see. Adam Espinoza for 2 said, is it a sin to listen to secular music? In my opinion, no, not at all.
There is a difference between biblical principles and biblical convictions. So there are things in the Bible that I think are definitely outlined wrong, don't do, adultery, theft, murder, what have you. And then there's other things that people feel from the word of God is a application God wants in their life. There's women who never wear pants. There are people who never listen to secular music. There are people who will never go near technology, right? Because they feel it. And while a lot of it, I think, is in bad faith or especially indoctrinated, there are people who read God's word and they get interpretations out of it that I don't necessarily get out of it. So while I don't think it's wrong to listen to secular music, as a matter of fact, I think that music is one of the gifts that we can enjoy responsibly. There are people who think that music is a gift from God and should be treated as such. So I'm not going to downplay their conviction in that regard. But I don't think it's a principle.
Yeah.
Or I should say, it's not a principle, but I don't disrespect their conviction
Yeah.
that it might be. So
yeah, I mean, I think that I would agree. There's certainly music that I would say maybe Christians shouldn't listen to, which is the stuff that actively encourages certain behaviors. But also I think that there's a difference between appreciating the beat and rhythm and melody to a song and agreeing with the lyrical content. I definitely listen to music that I don't agree with what they're saying all the time. So I think as long as you're not using it for the purpose of like worshiping something, I don't see any issue necessarily with just listening to whatever music you want
Yeah,
to.
listening to demonic summoning music,
Yeah.
probably bad.
Don't maybe if the song is like, Jesus
If it's
Christ
Latin
dying was
being
a good
spoken
thing, ha
backwards,
ha ha, abort babies, like that might
yeah,
not be a good thing to listen
you
to.
use your discernment.
Uh,
That's like that, but that's like someone being like, uh, is it wrong for a Christian to watch movies? And we're like, absolutely not. And then they're like, all right, cool, because I've been on Pornhub a lot lately. It's like that's a completely different. You're,
yeah.
that's a bad faith argument.
Kellen, the official data for 4.99 said not a Christian, but love good storytelling in the historic context, you guys. So thank you. By the way, yes, we Feds are pagans.
I didn't need to be told that.
I would be so unsurprised if the entire federal government were secretly actually worshiping Moloch. Is Bohemian Grove evidence of it? I don't think so, but is it possible? Yes. You guys have sent in just so many of these. Trying to catch them all. There we go. Hammond for 2 said, I'm sorry, Isaiah. He said Wendabussy.
You read it. He typed it, and you decided to say it out loud.
He
Thank you, Aiden.
He paid me to say the word.
Look at you taking money to do your dirty deeds. How do you feel?
Plaids for 5 said both of y'all should try and get with the Weird Bible Project collab. They've got some incredible Bible explanations. I think I did watch a video of theirs the other day and I liked it. I think if it was the animated ones, then yes. Have you heard of those guys?
The what?
The Bible Project.
I've heard that name before, but I can't remember where.
I've seen a couple of their videos, but yeah, that would be a good person to reach out to. I can definitely look into it. Dovin Doragon said for 5 said, "Hey Wendigoon, have you thought about doing a read through of the Bible unedited as a podcast?"
Like an audiobook?
I guess.
No. I mean, if people wanted that, then that'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just, the face I was making. I was like, wait, wouldn't that just be an audiobook?
yeah, I
trying to
guess
decipher.
they're saying unedited, so I guess like literally as a podcast, just you reading the Bible.
Yeah, because I would imagine edited would imply there is some commentary, but if there's no commentary, it's just me reading. Yeah. I mean, if people want me, if they just want to hear my voice read the Bible, then perhaps.
I think that might just be it. They might just be like, I need these sultry Southern tones.
Why not? I'll make it. I would make it a charity thing. I'd feel bad about doing that and profiting, but I would do that and like make it go to a fund for something, perhaps.
Yeah. White Trash Panda for 2. I'm sorry, I can't read that one. I can't do that.
I have to go find it.
The Wendigoon new name. You can guess what it is.
Okay. Thank you for using your discernment this time. I'm gonna guess
so nicely.
I'm gonna guess it ends in USSY. Just
a
crazy. Yep. Okay. Yep. Keep reading.
Spaz for 2 said, "Are you sure it
was
a woman?"
Took a lot of restraint. I know.
Are you sure it was a woman? I remember it being a ducky, but I don't know what this is in reference to.
Oh yeah, I saw that earlier. It gave me a flashback. Whenever VeggieTales did the story of Bathsheba, it was like a duck named Bathy, like a rubber duck that David just really wanted the rubber ducky. Yeah, which is pretty funny.
I mean, that's one way to explain it to kids for sure.
And I remember as a kid, like perfectly getting across, like, he had all these riches, but he had to steal that rubber ducky from that one guy. Yeah, like I immediately
got sense. Let's see, what else do we have here? Switch back over to super chats. Also, I would ask that you guys stop sending super chats at this point in the show. Otherwise, we're gonna be up till 11. I appreciate it a lot, but I'm like, oh boy, I don't want you guys to spend money and then not get an answer. So, although I guess I could start doing content where we go over any super chats we don't hit and make a video responding to them, which wouldn't be a horrible idea. Let's see. I love how passionate Wendigoon is when it comes to the Bible. This is from Joseph Turner for 5. It had become a big inspiration for me to get better with my faith and closer to God.
That's very kind. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Sheeta Skunker for 10 said Planetary Lullaby is a Christian story on deviant art about a war between angels and demons on a planetary scale. Might be good to review for your Bible fanfic series.
Interesting.
Pardon me, I have allergies. Hegath for 20 said Isaiah, something about your passion in the Lord has played a part in helping me come back to Christ. Thank you.
Oh, that means a lot. Thank you.
Saul Spear Lover 420 for 2 said, can we get back to the spear talk, please?
That's what made me laugh earlier.
Yeah.
I saw that name. Yeah.
Mika Lim for 5 said 2 things. Aiden, a VTuber named Bao, tweeted out one of your videos. I will have to look at that. Bao. 2, thoughts on Romans 14:2.
I I like that everyone thinks this highly of us, but it is funny that people are just like they've got it memorized.
Yeah, I'm like, oh boy.
They'll know what's in there. Yeah.
Scroll
What was it?
through
14:2?
Romans 14:2.
14:2. For one believeth that he may eat all things, another who is weak eateth herbs.
I love how we have different translations pulled up. Because mine says, for one believes he may eat all things, but he who is weak eats only vegetables. The Bible be like, vegans are weak.
I imagine this is read in context where it's like, him that is weak in, because the verse before says, him that is weak in the faith receive ye, but not to doubtful disputations.
Yeah.
Let not him that eateth despise him that eateth not, and let not him which eateth not judge him that eateth, for God hath
Yeah.
received him. He's saying that like you eat meat and things, but other people, just eat herbs. So therefore, in the ministry, be careful that you don't just only, invite people in who believe exactly what you believe. Uh, as far as him saying that weak people eat herbs, that's pretty funny.
It's just, yeah. God hates vegans. This is the importance of reading the book in context, though, is you'll come across stuff and be like, this verse says a thing, and then the context of the verse makes it mean the opposite of what you thought it means.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, right. And I was supposed to look up what the video that Bao tweeted was. But let me see. Yeah, Bao VTuber. All right, I have that pulled up. I can take a look at it later. Here we go. Faust, the Guild of Paranormal Theology, for 5, said the belief in science is a religion. Most scientists do no big-time experimentation and simply have faith that their predecessors were correct. A sham. That is definitely true. That there are some scientists who don't bother to try and prove and disprove what their predecessors did, but I would also say there are definitely scientists who are still doing good work. I think more than anything, it's the science enthusiasts who give science a bad name. The people who like look at it and go, no, we don't. We already know everything. Science is science. It's settled. I think anybody who says the science is settled, unless it's about like, whether or not something is a gas or a solid, is probably lying to you. Let's see. Professor Donger for 5 said, my brother betrayed our family recently. I know as a Christian that I should forgive him eventually, but it's hard not to be angry. Advice, please.
So I'll say the same thing to you that I said to my friend who was trying to who's recently been trying to reconnect with his estranged father.
Mm-hmm.
Whose father, I don't know how your friend betrayed you or brother betrayed you, but what I told my friend whose father was pretty absent for most of his childhood was, do not harbor hatred for them, because all keeping hatred does is it wears on you. It doesn't do anything to them. It grinds you down. It ruins your thought process. Do not harbor bitterness for them, but at the same time, you don't owe them anything. If they have chosen to be rude and to miss out on parts of your life, then they're not owed those back. They're not owed time with you. Um, they now I would take into consideration if this is a decision regarding trust, if you maybe be cautious about trusting them again. But for the time being, don't hate because that just breaks you down. Um, but don't feel like you need to make up for anything because if you are right in what you're saying that they betrayed the family, um, then that's on them. That's
Hmm.
not on you.
Yeah.
But don't like Christ forgave the people who murdered them. Don't hate anyone. Just be smart about it. What you do with them in the future.
I also think that it's important to recognize that forgiveness does not necessarily mean that you are accept like what you said. It's about trust as well. You can
Yeah.
forgive without trusting. To say I no longer hold to say I no longer am angry with you is one thing. It does not necessarily mean I now trust you again. So I think you had a
Yeah.
great point there. Um, let's see. Fuda Bomber said for 5 said, "Hey guys, thanks so much for all your biblical content. My mom only looks at me when I bring her cool Bible facts." Well, that's a sad comment. I hope that's a
the,
joke.
the way that's worded, she only looks at me. That's fantastic.
I
I
hope
hope she
that's
looks
just a
at you
joke.
tonight, you poor child.
Bring her Bible facts for us and tell her we're sorry. Let's see. The White Trash Panda for 2 said Wendellosophy, which I think is if you ever start a philosophy show, that's what it should be called.
Wendellosophy. That
Yep.
sounds like a dinosaur.
Electric Skeleton said read 2 Samuel 12:15 to 23.
Yeah, that's I was incorrect when I said David's son was stillborn.
Ah,
He got sick and died 7 days later. David was very upset about it.
got it. Okay. We make mistakes every now and then. We're human.
Well, I mean, he died after birth, and I was just like, "Oh, the child died. He was stillborn, but he
Yeah.
wasn't technically stillborn. He died a few days or whatever."
Ben Krasniak for 20 said Wendigoon, is that a poop bucket in the corner? I wish I'd read before I started reading. Also, Aiden the Wendigo
Yeah,
says that
me
if you
too.
keep telling people why he did 9/11, then he's going to incorporate him into my next scheme.
What are they even comprehending as a poop bucket? Is there a bucket behind
I,
me?
I don't know.
That? Something over there?
I
The
don't know.
boxes? Those are boxes with okay. I'm confused. That the happy birthday bag? Is that the
Oh my
bucket?
god.
Oh,
Sir Cockington Roachbach the Third. Hi Tay.
that's a
Said,
great name.
yeah, isn't it? Came from one of my Twitch streams, if I remember correctly. I can't remember exactly how we got there though. Said 24-hour stream of you two reading the entire Bible. I don't know if we'd be able to get
It would
through
take
it in
way
24
longer than
hours.
24 hours. My
Maybe
word,
if
we may
like
get through Genesis in that time.
maybe if like you
Maybe.
started with Genesis and I started with Mark or Matthew, maybe if we just read it at the exact same time.
Nah, fam. Why do I get the Old Testament? It's like 3/4 of it.
Fine,
Grow
I'll take
up.
the Old Testament. God. Um, this question is for both of you. It's from Andrew Green for $5. Do you believe that your own works contribute to your chances to go to heaven? I'm a longtime primitive Baptist.
No. Glad we cleared that up.
I'm in agreement. Salvation by grace through faith alone is the doctrine,
If thou
and
shalt believe with thy heart the Lord Jesus, if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in thine heart that
mhm,
God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. That's the end of it. That's it. We've
yep,
reiterated that several times. It's a simple one-step program and it's over. It's done. That's it.
one
We don't have
step
to do
program.
some fancy hoo-ha. We don't have to do all these extra layers of it. Salvation was
Mhm.
free and for all of any land or culture. You don't have to go to a church, pay yourself. No.
I love that.
Continue. Sorry.
I'm kind of in the same camp. You know, the way I'll look at it is if you genuinely do believe, you will do good works. So you don't need to do good works to prove your faith.
When,
Your faith will
when
prove your
Paul
works.
said faith without works is dead, he was talking about our eternal home in heaven. That
Mhm.
entire chapter is going into detail about the assurance of salvation and what we do for others. And when he says faith is out without works is dead, He is saying that we are effectively dead in Christ and useless if we don't do some work with the faith we have. He is not saying that you go to hell. I have no idea why people started interpreting it that way, other than for the church to start making money off tithes. But like saying that faith without works is dead, which is mentioned once, is the nexus for you have to work to go to heaven, is the exact same level as saying you should handle snakes because before Jesus's ascension, he said that you can pick up snakes and not be bit. So by that logic, snake handlers are sound doctrine. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. It was great. It was a good rant. WG for 9.99 said, "Hey guys, love y'all's channels. What are y'all's thoughts, opinions on Christians keeping the Torah?"
What? Keeping or gatekeeping?
Keeping, like adhering to the old law.
No.
I mean, Christ lays out what you're supposed to do, and I think that was for a reason. There's a reason that there is Christian doctrine, and that Christ didn't come and say, "Hey, follow all of the rules except the exact ones I told you not to follow." Like that's not what the Sermon on the Mount was. That's not what Christ's teachings were. It was, I come not to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. A lot of people look at that and they're like, "Oh, well, that means you should follow the Torah." It's like, no. You're not understanding what I come to fulfill the law means.
People ask, I'm also, let me clarify. I'm not talking about the people in chat right now. I'm not saying that, oh, you guys ask. I'm saying, so, like, whoever is asking this, I'm sure was acting it in good faith because they just didn't know. This isn't about you. But there are, like, people who are Christians who are trying to teach others who will ask these questions when it is answered in the Bible pretty directly. And Christ said, I come not to destroy the law, but to fulfill it, that it may be at its end. So he's saying that the law is over because he was the final step of the puzzle. So therefore, don't follow the law. There's whole sections of Paul explaining why circumcision doesn't, or Paul and Peter explaining why circumcision doesn't matter anymore, explaining why you can eat pork now. And Paul was respectful of the Jews. Whenever he would come to their lands, he would abide by their rules. But as soon as he left, he didn't, because it didn't matter. It just, yeah. So no, basically, there's no reason to.
Second, I'm just.
And unlike earlier when I was talking about the difference between like convictions and principles, there's a if someone willingly ignores sections of the Bible, then I don't really agree with their principle or their conviction. Whereas if they read between the lines and think the Bible means this, like Bible talks a lot about modesty. Modesty. Because of that, a lot of people won't show their elbows or knees when they go out. Now, clearly, I disagree with that, but I do believe in modesty to the point of don't run around naked, right? So I respect their conviction because I see how it can be drawn from scripture. But if someone says I need to follow the old law, then I'm like, okay, well, you just haven't read it then. You're just wrong. Simple as.
Guys,
I ignore your conviction.
That doesn't mean don't follow the law as a general blanket statement.
No, I'm very clearly stating to all federal agents who are watching, if you love God, do not listen to federal regulations. This is the point. Sorry, go ahead.
You're fine.
You open the door. I couldn't help myself.
Let's see. I need to do some more scrolling. Okay. For some reason, YouTube is just going so slow for me right now, and I think it's because the Wi-Fi here is probably like 10 megabytes per second. Tank Axe for 10 said, in your opinions, what's the best way to work God/Christianity into a fantasy or fictional stories? Most of what I encounter is either a corrupt church or a malicious entity. I mean,
say that again. What?
In your opinions, what is the best way to work God/Christianity into fantasy or fictional stories?
Oh, well, I mean, if you're telling stories about characters, you can definitely just apply God the way he is in the real world, like, his
Yeah.
faith and all that. But if you're telling a story directly about them, just be respectful.
Yeah.
Scripture has enough to work off of. If you as a Christian truly pray about it and feel at peace, and I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, you can take a lot of leeway with what an individual Christian character believes. What you can't do is say that a Christian character believes things that are blasphemous and that they're right. That would
Yeah, yeah.
be that's when it becomes blasphemy. But if you have a Christian character or a Christian country in your story or something like that, then you don't need that country to behave perfectly Christian all the time because that would just be unrealistic. Um, unless it's like some sort of biblical allegory about a shining perfect city on a hill. Um, but yeah, I think it's just try to be respectful, use the Bible as a compass, and if you're worried that something might cross into blasphemy, then talk to an educated person about it. Go to a priest, a pastor, something like that, and say, hey, what do you think of this? Paladin Templar for 2 said, when's Cosmic Horror of the Bible coming out? LOL.
Eventually, it will happen.
Oh God. Cosmic Horror of the Bible. Is that gonna cover like the Leviathan? Toe Jam for 5 said, a while ago you guys talked about the prophecy of Michael slaying Leviathan, but I couldn't find the verse. Could you help me out? Also, it's my birthday. Well, happy birthday,
Actually,
Toe Jam.
happy birthday. I saw that earlier. It's like, for their birthday, I'll pull it up. So I did
Okay.
find it. It's not Leviathan. If I said it's Leviathan in the past, I apologize. It's the dragon or the
Yeah.
devil that's specifically mentioned. And it's Revelations 12, verse 7, where it says, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So
Yep.
that old
Abstract.
serpent is such a
Yeah.
good.
That old
I
serpent.
love it.
Abstract Egg for 5 said, love y'all and your content. Thanks to Wendigoon, Dr. Enough is now one of my favorite beverages.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear.
I haven't had Dr. Enough
Congratulations,
since Tennessee.
loser.
I'm sorry, they don't sell it here.
We'll get move. There you go.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Benjamin Chapman said, I can't stand all the Tartaria nonsense I see all the time. That and flat earthers, they seem to go hand in hand. I saw one claiming we had to dig out the United States and repopulate it. Yeah. So, Friday on the Lore Lodge. Friday. Also, Isaiah, if you want to have an aneurysm, go. I'll send you the link to that video, and also a channel called Spirit Science if you ever feel like wanting to hurt yourself.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Yeah.
Spirit Science is a trip. Mental Hedgehogs for 1009 said, John 21:25, Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written. Yeah. I mean, just all the things that didn't get written down that Christ did. Oh, wow. My stomach hurts. Everything okay here? Yes, it is. All right. I had a weird thing happen on screen. Benjamin Chapman for 10 said, I support the Wendigoon audio Bible idea. I also support the Wendigoon audio Bible idea. I think you should do that.
We'll see. Maybe.
Eventually,
That's a
one
lot
day.
of recording. That's a lot
It
of
is.
hours, but we'll see.
If you started doing like one chapter a week now, then
yeah, if
you'd
I could
probably
do
be
it
done
based
by
on
old
books,
age.
probably, because I would read through like Genesis and record a day, and that'd be fine.
Yeah.
I don't know about like the Old Testament, but
The whole Old
I broke
Testament
it
wants
up.
to be a lot. Yeah. Jack Garcia said, BTW Aiden, I took your advice on the lesson idea and did the prodigal son, so thank you very much. Of course, it's always a good one. Always, especially for younger people. Prodigal son is, I think, one of the better parables because so many young people go through a phase where they abandon religion and then come back to it. And I think if you instill it in their minds early that, you are never lost. You can always be returned to the flock. I think that while some people might look at it and say, well, doesn't that just encourage people to go and, sin and spend a time of their life away from God and everything. I think that more importantly, it reminds them when they do go through that period that they can come back. If the parable of the prodigal son pops into their head while they're asking themselves, should I look to return to the faith? I think that that will be very beneficial to have instilled in kids from a young age. Um, Ben Krajniak for $2 said the white thing over your shoulder, my bad, regarding the poop bucket, I believe.
The table? That giant table? Okay, whatever.
Oh boy. Andrew Green said for 5. 1 second, let me get this pulled up right. I totally agree. My father, a longtime pastor, has said the same thing my whole life. In the same vein, what branch of Christianity are you to? I'm not sure precisely what that was in reference to, but it was very recent, so maybe it was the salvation by grace through faith, probably. It's 10 minutes ago. I am a Wesleyan Methodist. What about you, Isaiah?
Baptist.
Baptist. So two of the bigger denominations in the U.S. Cakes for 5 said just wanted to throw $5 to y'all who I look up to. Well, thank you, Cakes. Appreciate you too. 3 Dexter Speckman for 2 said thoughts on what the Bible says on LGBTQ plus.
It is a matter of personal decision. Even for people who argue that it is a sin, they must admit that it is a sin that does not affect anyone else, and therefore it is a personal thing between you and God. In other words, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like that's between you and God. Figure out your own salvation. None of my business.
Yeah,
So
I would agree. That is one of those sins that on its own hurts nobody else. So that's that, like you said, that's a matter between you and God. And also, I mean,
to clarify, if you come to your discernment that it is
yeah,
even that,
yeah,
not saying that it is at all. Yeah.
yeah. So I also think a lot of people make the mistake of looking at the Bible saying something is a sin and immediately deciding that means that it's somehow your job to judge or punish or reprimand. Just because you believe something to be a sin does not mean that it's your job to go and judge others for it. And at the end of the day, it's your relationship with God that matters. So that's up to you. Let's see. And Christopher Guier for 5 said, has anyone brought up the blasphemy that occurred in Aiden's Twitch chat on Wednesday? I'm not sure what we're talking about because I was probably not paying a ton of attention to the chat at that moment. If somebody can remind me what it was, though. And then I will pull up this and see if there's anything. Let's see. There we go. Oh yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, I can send Isaiah the space Jews thing. That's a good introduction to spirit science. That tells you exactly how ridiculous it is.
What did you just say to me?
Oh, this channel Spirit Science argues that the Jews are actually an ascended race from a different time period in reality who failed to reach Christ consciousness and were sent back in time to continue developing. And they helped the Atlanteans fend off the Martians. All of this was revealed by Thoth.
So it's just like someone who hasn't taken their medication. The belief
It's theosophy on steroids, which
okay.
theosophy is already.
Lovely. Its own
Uh,
thing. Yeah. Gotcha. I see
yeah,
what we're
but
dealing with.
it's one of those things. All right, so yeah, I think that's all the super chats, and it is 9 p.m. So let's probably wind this down, I guess. Isaiah, is there any final thoughts that you have? Anything you want to say?
Jesus loves you. Don't murder your chief general to sleep with their wife. And Hallelujah is a pretty good song.
All very good points. I'm in perfect agreement. All right. Well, to everybody who has been watching, hanging along, chatting with us, thank you so much. We will try and get more consistent about the schedule of this program, but I make no promises because both of our schedules are ridiculous. Make sure that if you're somehow not already following Isaiah, you go follow him everywhere. He's a beautiful man with many
Same with
beautiful
Aiden
things to say.
at the Lore Lodge.
So, all right. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you guys on the next one.